presented by Dano's Seasoning. Yum yum, get you some.
What's going on, everybody? Little fake out intro there, wasn't it there, Marv?
So what's going on here?
Yeah, I was like, oh, it wasn't looping anymore. I took the loop off and it jumped right to us staring at the screens. But we are here. We are excited to bring you week 3 wrap up tonight. As always, brought to you by collegefootballdogs.com, part of Dogs TV, and our 4 sponsors at the top of the screen: W Energy, Fanplex Graphics, TSN Off-Road for your tailgating needs, and Dano's Seasoning. Real quick, Marv, I don't know if you've seen me share these yet, the Fanplex stuff, but there's
no, I
one.
haven't seen those.
This is 2 Troy's.
It's pretty cool.
And another app one there.
I like
So
this.
at some point, they'll probably be in the background here. I got to figure out how not to ruin these things and getting them up on the football field behind me here. But yeah, thank you to all of them for helping with this show. And of course, as always, welcome Mr. Artie Cat himself.
Yeah, we missed Artie Cat last week.
Yeah, we surprised him probably because we did a show like an hour before we went live. He's probably checking the schedule going, I never saw this one pop up days before.
Gotta be on your toes.
Yeah. Well, we're going to try and be more consistent going forward around this time on Sunday nights. Maybe sometimes 8:30, sometimes 8:45, sometimes as late as 9 o'clock. But we definitely want to get it going before we jump into the full new week. Right, Marv?
Yeah, sorry, I've got a barking dog in here. I apologize.
Oh, you're good. I guess one thing we can talk about before we break down games kind of individually here, the Sun Belt overall, only 5-5 on the weekend.
Yeah, but I feel like the 5 wins were better than the 5 losses. If you look at some of the losses, that occurred, Michigan, Iowa, Virginia Tech, South Florida, but and obviously the Arizona State, Texas State game, but that was a phenomenal football game. But
that was.
I feel like there were some really good wins that kind of outweigh the losses, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'm gonna put actually I can go back here, and this is the weekend at large as far as what we're looking at. So I put this graphic up on social media earlier for those of you who may have seen it. It's giving us the breakdown. We only had 10 games this weekend as we had 4 teams already on bye in week 3. We've got the winners of those games up the top left and the losers on the right side there. And then this is as a conference what we did. So obviously stay undefeated against the FCS, which is good. Always got to do that. And we struggled still against the power teams, right? 0-1 versus the Big 12, although like you said, very close game there. 0-2 versus the Big 10. I'd say very expected outcomes in those 2 matchups.
Yeah, I think one of the matchups was probably closer than what most people thought it would be.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Troy was up at Iowa at the half, right?
I think they were, and then with Arkansas State only lost by 10 to Michigan at the Big House, which is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, that one started off looking like it was going to go a certain way, to be honest, and then they came to life and made Michigan look human. What did they end up throwing? 3 interceptions, I think.
They did, yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, the ACC. I think going in, you might have thought that if ODU could catch a little luck or a little bit better play on the offensive side, they stood a chance against Virginia Tech with that good defense that they've had so far, but wasn't to be. Still, the struggles on offense really still struggle there for the Monarchs. Still win the weekend over the American. That's always good.
Hey, gotta win those games over peer conferences.
Yes, and then probably the most important and biggest splash of the weekend: 1-0 versus the SEC. The Sun Belt is perfect versus the SEC this year.
Yeah, let's.
One way to put it, right?
You don't have to go into a lot of details. Just throw that stat up: Sun Belt undefeated over the SEC, and
there you go.
Leave it alone.
Yeah, and then here I'll just throw this one up. This is the totals for the season so far. So obviously undefeated against the FCS and Conference USA, because you could pretty much just make those one category, I think, right, Marv?
Yeah, I agree with that.
Well, okay, so we're not undefeated against the SEC as a season. We are 1-2, but that's not a bad win-loss percentage, really.
No, I mean, anytime a conference partner can get a win over I guess P4 now, kind of getting used to say that, but that's a big deal.
Yeah,
If it is
absolutely.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, it wasn't the greatest SEC team. However, Vanderbilt came in a kind of surprising 2-0 with that kind of shocking victory over Virginia Tech the first week of the season. Well, shocking in some regards. I don't know if I believe the Virginia Tech hype train as others did, but a lot of people seemingly did. But yeah, as you can see there, that right side's a little uglier. 0-1 versus the MAC, 0-2 versus the Big Ten. We already covered most of that because it just happened this weekend. We remain struggling against the ACC, an 0-4 record. But I'd say if you broke this part down, I take it. I mean, if you don't tell me any of the teams, you don't tell me any of the matchups, you just look at the numbers. I mean, I think it's still okay. I would like to have at least a 500 record versus the MAC, which wouldn't be possible with only one matchup, but I want to be better than all the peer institutions. So the MAC and the Mountain West, I'd like better records there. I think, yeah, you want records versus the Power Four conferences, but you got to be realistic in the sense that your best team's not going up there against their worst typically. So
Very true.
I don't know. What are your thoughts on like kind of this overall look?
I mean, like you said, if I'm going to look at peer conferences first, so 2-0 against Conference USA, winning record over the AAC. You're right. You only had one chance at the MAC, but you'd like to be ahead on that. Mountain West, that's probably where it should be, to be completely honest, considering that, Boise State was one of those teams. And,
Yep.
to get one win over a P4, if you had two in there, it probably looks a heck of a lot better. But yeah, that where I think it should be.
Yeah, I'd agree. It doesn't look too ugly to me. I put that when I posted this up earlier. I did kind of ask, like, is this kind of what people expected? And I had not a ton of comments, but I think most people did kind of say, kind of yeah, in a sense. A lot of people just liked it, so I would say that that's essentially kind of an agreement. Like, yeah, it's kind of the broad spectrum look. It's kind of on par with what we may have expected there. So, yeah, I don't know, but let's get into this week 3 look here, and obviously we've got the title being Georgia State's upset over Vanderbilt. A surprise. I guess that was the nightcap, right? Didn't I think that game finished off the Sun Belt schedule?
Yeah, that was a late game. Yeah.
Yep. I was finishing up as I drove home from Greenville in the car. I had to get that one on there to listen to it on one game that was never in doubt.
Yeah.
From all the way back on Thursday night. I was not surprised. I saw that South Alabama was, I think, anywhere from a 37 to 37.5 point favorite, I believe. And I said from the very start, take them, the points, anything they'll give you, and just hammer it, because this Northwestern State team, and I just did a show with the Fun Belt podcast we recorded earlier today, where they talked about the fact that they're so bad. The 0-2 thing, and now 0-3 after this one, is not as surprising when you hear essentially they had essentially like shut down the program, and so they're literally like year one. So
gotcha. Well, they're pretty bad.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense, because when I looked at this matchup, we knew that, yes, South Alabama had come in 0-2. They had lost to Ohio. They did not have Gio Lopez in that game. They also were missing a running back in that game. So maybe not a fair assessment against that MAC team. But if you look at Northwestern State, they were 0-2 versus FCS competition, in which they still didn't perform. And you're talking about Gio Lopez and that offense putting up video game numbers against a team that's already struggling defensively. Forget it.
Yeah, I mean, they put up what was the total yards? They had 622 yards, caused 4 turnovers, 365 yards rushing. But yeah, 87 points. That's a lot.
Yeah, that is so many. Ben James saying, "What's up, Dominic and Marv? What's up, Ben? Thanks for joining us, man." Yeah, at one point they scored 3 consecutive plays, not series.
I didn't see that.
insanity. And they cut out 6 minutes of the fourth quarter, I think.
Oh, was that what they did?
Yeah, they did like a mercy rule. I don't know. Obviously with what we do, I'm a little bit of a Sunbelt sicko when it comes to like just taking it all in. So I had this one on the tablet as I watched Arizona State and Texas State on the big screen, and we'll get to that one in just a second. But I was like, I would look away and then look back and go, oh, they're showing a replay of the previous touchdown. And then I'm like, wait, how did they just get 28 points? It's like, no, it wasn't a replay. They had intercepted the first pass of the next series. Those types of things just kept happening. It was like, okay, this is a little insane. But
they were up by 6 touchdowns at halftime, and they were up. They had 80 points on the board at the end of the third quarter.
Yeah, I was very honestly asking myself, and I think I might have even texted you and Seth saying, do they get to 100 points?
Well, apparently, if they want to cut some minutes out, they could have.
I think you're right.
This is
at that point, you got a gun for it, right?
Man, this is kind of the discussion that we had about the App Clemson game. Like, when is enough, right?
True.
Obviously, you had your opponent outmatched. You want to run your stuff, but at what point is it like you're not learning anything? You're getting better. And then the other side of it is, in the coaching fraternities, like you're out there trying to embarrass a program, and
right.
I don't know. 87 is too much.
Yeah, that's probably true. But I think like when you're on the team and you're just like, I'm not doing it to diminish them. I'm just trying to get that point. You know what I mean? But
hey, the other side of the coin is Northwestern State needs to stop them.
Yeah. And they didn't. They didn't do much of that at all. Okay, like you said, easily the game of the night, whether it was NFL or NCAA, it didn't matter. Phenomenal. Both teams, really. I was impressed with both teams.
I was too. That the first half was just incredible. 21-21 at halftime, and it was just back and forth, absolute war. But yeah, I came away very impressed with both teams. And kudos to Texas State for getting Arizona State to come to their house, to come to San Marcos. That's really cool. It just came up a little short, but man, that was a heck of a ball game to watch.
Yeah, I was not disappointed one bit. I think it lived up to every bit of the hype and expectation. Artie Cat is saying extremely disappointing. Seems like the air has gone out of the season. I'd have to disagree. And the reason I'll say I'll disagree personally is because I think the Arizona State team is really good. So to lose to them, So to lose to them in this type of fashion, you didn't get beat by 2 touchdowns or more. You were driving with the ball, and I mean that ball that McLeod throws. If it's more outside than doesn't trail inside like that, I mean he doesn't even get touched on his way to the end zone, and they take the lead with I don't know how much time left exactly, roughly a minute or so, maybe less than that.
It wasn't much.
I mean, then you're looking at a possible win, and that's how close that game was. Some turnovers that were, I mean, I don't even know if I would say McLeod forced that throw. It was just a little bit too much inside where his wide receiver had to cut in instead of staying on that out route, or not out route, but that sideline route. I don't know. I can't remember if he kind of threw it off the back foot a little bit because he had just a little bit of pressure, but I mean, he picked out the right guy. It just wasn't as accurate as it needed to be. But we're talking about a victory at that point, and we're feeling very different about, where we sit against some of the better conferences and teams in this country right now.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, up until that point, the Air McLeod had a pretty solid night. I think he threw 4 touchdown passes, but the only negative to this is, they lost. They had a chance to go down and win the game, but they turned the ball over 3 times in the game. Lost the turnover battle by 2, but still, that was a really, really good football game. And if you're a Sunbelt team in the West and you got to play Texas State, you're probably a little bit nervous because that's a solid football team.
Yeah, and if you're not nervous, balls of steel on you, because you should be. That offense is not one to be messed with. Artie Cat's disagreeing. He's saying they're not that good. They have no killer instinct. I think Ben Bell on the defensive side has a killer instinct.
I don't know. And obviously Artie's. I'm sure he was probably at the game. I thought they were gritty. I mean, you know, Arizona State scores first, and then you take a lead, and then Arizona State comes back, and then you come back and take the lead again. I thought they showed some resiliency and showed some fight.
Yeah, the only real disappointing part for me was the Mahdi fumble, because I felt like that could have been a drive where he really got going for the first time in the night. He was still a leading rusher for the game for both teams, which is kind of crazy, because you had, oh gosh, what's his name, Scattaboo.
Let me see that. I'm gonna Scattaboo, which is I'm gonna go ahead and put that for a running back. That is on the all running back team name.
Yeah, definitely. But the fact that he had a pretty good night from the sounds of it, when you're watching the game, but then you look back and you're like, oh, statistically, he was not the leading rusher. It was still Mahdi, but he didn't even get to complete that series where they're starting back deep in their own territory. And that run was looking like it was going to gain a pretty good amount of yards. I don't think it was going to be a first down run, but he looked like he could break at least a couple yards off and get going. And that's the one where he loses it, unfortunately. And then the McLeod thing, I think, was the very next possession. But yeah, I don't know. I'm not worried, though. To me personally, again, from an outside perspective, I know Artie's going to feel a certain way because he's closer to the team, both in fandom and location, and he sees it in person, and we are watching it on television. But I don't have any concerns for Texas State going forward. I'm not saying they're going undefeated from here or anything crazy, but I think they're going to be very good the rest of the season.
I agree.
We've got Ben James talking, I think, his team is up next. So he says Arkansas State proved doubters wrong and showed resilience. That absolutely did, because like I said, listening to this game going down the road, it sounded to me as if this game was going to get out of hand quite quickly. So yeah, they absolutely rounded back into form. We already discussed that part, but yeah, they did get 3 picks from the Michigan quarterback, and he did get pulled. It was interesting that he was almost perfect pretty much for the day before those 3 picks. He didn't throw a lot. So
but no, that like you said, it looked like it was going to run away for a little while. And those 3 picks definitely kept them in the game. Statistically, they got a little outmanned, which you would expect going against the defending national champions. But to go to the Big House and only lose by 10 points, I think a lot of Sunbelt teams, if you told them before they played Michigan that would be the outcome, they'd probably be okay with that because it meant that you played pretty darn well.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. Yes, they are not at the level they were last year. They did get beat badly by Texas. That does not make Michigan a bad team all of a sudden. I thought they were overrated coming into the season as far as their ranking was concerned, but I knew that they could still be a top 25 team easily, and I do believe they still are a top 25 team. But yeah, 10-point game, absolutely. They had to have covered the spread. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I'm pretty sure it was north of
had to have been more than 10. Had to have been more than 10. Yeah. And listen, if you're a Michigan fan, you're probably a little worried. You got beat pretty good by Texas, but hey, turns out Texas is pretty darn good. AP had them ranked number 1 in the polls that came out today. But then to come home and only win by 10 against an opponent they probably see as inferior. But Arkansas State might be a pretty decent football team. Spread was 22.
Yeah, so they crushed that. What's funny is I thought Jalen Raynor could be the X factor here, right? A scrambling quarterback who can also throw the ball very accurately. But as Ben James says, the backup comes in and throws 2 touchdowns. So not as many yards as Raynor on the day, but he had 2 touchdowns and only
7 for 11.
Yeah,
that's not bad. Yeah. Now I didn't get to see much of the game. Did McLean come in due to injury, or was that a coach's decision to get a spark?
That is a good question, because I will say, I was driving from my house to Greenville for the app game. So I listened to it as far as I could there. Once I got out of the truck and everything, all I saw was a score later on as a final. So I actually don't know exactly what happened. I'm going to go back and watch this one, but I don't know exactly why he came in.
Yeah, Ben might be able to tell us.
Coach decision, he says.
Coach decision, huh? Listen, Raynor was 19 for 33 for 140 yards through the pick. Wasn't like he was having a terrible game, but yeah, sometimes you need a spark. The other team's giving you the ball, and you got to move it. So,
yeah, absolutely, and then they moved it plenty. Again, Harden 52 yards, 2 touchdowns, leading wide receiver, only had 3 receptions on the day with those stat lines. So pretty impressive overall, I'd say. I thought Arkansas State could be one of those teams that could challenge for the top of the West. And it looks like after a game like this, again, it's one of those things. It's just kind of similar to the one we just talked about, honestly. I don't think there's a lot of shame in losing to a national champion from the year before and a top 25 team by only 10 points at their place when you came in as a heavy underdog. So
you going ahead and circling that Arkansas State, Texas State game as a potential whoever wins that represents the West?
I already had it circled for that exact reason. Now, I will say some doubt has crept into my mind with how good the Cajuns look as well. So you have a 3-team race now, as far as I'm concerned. I'm not sure if it'll include anybody more than that. I think those are your top 3 dogs in the West, with South Alabama and Troy looking a little down. Although, I say that South Alabama just scored 87 points. But I do think you've got to look at the competition. So
yes,
until they do it more consistently against more teams, it's going to be hard to see. But you've got one coming up this week where
you're going to find out a lot more about South Alabama on Thursday night.
Yes, and I believe App State. Honestly, I don't know if ECU told you enough. I mean,
we'll get to that. I think it told you about the character of the team, but we'll get to the ECU stuff here in a little while.
Yeah. All right, this one up in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love, Coastal Carolina barely escapes Temple, 28-20. I shocked by this one.
I was very shocked by this one. Look, out of the gate, looked like Coastal was going to just blow them out of the water. And let's face it, I know you got some ties to Temple, right? Your family?
My brother's a season ticket holder. He went to Temple. So yeah,
Temple's not a good football team.
Nope.
And haven't been for quite some time. I know they were at home, but like I said, it got off to a 14-0 start pretty quickly. It's like, oh, here Coastal goes. They're going to boat race them. But it ended up being probably a closer game than I think a lot of people would have expected.
Yes.
Like I said, I thought they were going to go up there and dominate and win easily by 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, no, I did too. I didn't have any question that they would cover any spread that it was. If it was 30 points, I thought they would do it. I don't remember exactly what the one off the top of my head was for this game. But yeah, I was shocked when I saw the final score.
17.5.
17.5?
17.5.
Yeah, I would have easily. I'm glad I didn't put any money on that one because I would have lost. I would have nailed Coastal on that one because
that might have been a little too much for me to bet on just because it was away. I can't imagine what it's like playing in an NFL stadium with 13,000 people in it. It's probably not the most exciting environment to play in, but man, there wasn't a lot of – neither offense moved the ball extremely well in this game. Coastal was held to less than 300 yards of offense. Temple had 314. Coastal only 103 yards passing. Probably if not for the 2 turnovers by Temple, could have been a little bit different. But little shock. Definitely expected Coastal to win by more.
Yes, absolutely. I did too. It started off hot, right? They were 14 up early in the first, and then just kind of a very even game, I guess you could say, after that. Because it's not like nobody put together a quarter with more than one score. So it wasn't like it was a back and forth affair as far as like punch for punch, blow for blow. It's kind of like, okay, you scored and whatever. A little bit of time later, somebody else scores. But yeah, I just shocked. I thought the Coastal was easily at the top of the East as far as early season aspects were concerned. People have brought up the fact that they haven't played much of anybody yet, which is possibly also true. I still point to that Jacksonville State game to start the year and say, you're going on the road against a team that is expected to compete for a Conference USA championship. Maybe they won't after what we've seen so far, but it's not also that they just won that game. They demolished them in that game.
They dominated that game.
So, this could be a slip up. It's a weird kind of, like you said, it's a weird atmosphere. You're in this massive pro stadium, probably got the best amenities you'll see all season as far as the locker room and stuff is concerned. And you walk out of this stadium and there's like 10,000 people in the crowd. I could tell you from being there twice last year, it's extremely strange and weird. It's like
So that's how people feel when they go play at Georgia State.
yeah, I would say honestly, we'll talk about that too later. Because I had something that when I was watching it, I just couldn't help but like feel weird about. But yeah, I mean, to me, it's like one of those high school championships, which we see all the time, unless you're maybe in the state of Texas. You go to these big college or pro stadiums to go play these games, and there's 8,000 people in the stands. It's like, I don't understand the whole aspect of that, but that's kind of what this feels like. Again, once you snap the ball, once you're playing that game, you can't let that be a factor, but possibly plays into a little bit of the struggles there after playing in a couple early season games that have had large crowds both at home and on the road there at Jacksonville State to start it out with. And I realized too, by the way, if you're seeing this, the graphic as far as the records are concerned are not updated, just the scores there. So obviously you can see from the score what their record would be. But this one caught me by surprise. So, going into the half, Troy up 14-10 on Iowa.
Yeah.
Not necessarily that they were, largely in the lead, but the fact that you grab a lead on a team defensively stout like Iowa was pretty surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Iowa, known for their defense, offense isn't much. 14-10, to be honest with you, I thought that might have been a possibility for the final score, just based off the way Iowa plays. But, Troy looked like they might have had a chance there and then just kind of got outplayed the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think – and there's a lot of frustrations with some of the Troy fan base, it sounds like, but I don't know how you didn't kind of expect this out of the gate.
Too many new pieces.
Yes, exactly. You got a new head coach, too many new pieces, too young of a roster to compete against what is this now? They've played Memphis and Iowa.
Yeah.
If you're a realist before the season started, you say you probably don't win either of those games. You hope to compete very closely with a Memphis. Yeah. And you hope to spring the surprise on Iowa, but I don't know how anybody would look at the schedule with what has transpired during the offseason and said, why aren't we winning these games? I mean, yeah, you want that first one back. The Nevada one, that's an even matchup at worst, right? And it was even. They get the 2-point conversion, they go to overtime. We've talked about that. But I just don't know. You have to be patient, right? The culture, the tradition are there, but you've got to bring people up in it. It has to be a long game here. And we're 3 weeks into the season against a schedule that's been one of, if not the toughest in the Sun Belt for the first 3 weeks. So,
yeah, I mean, listen, you're right. They played Memphis. Memphis just went and beat Florida State, which Florida State might not be that good.
Right.
But, Memphis is going to be in that discussion for the playoff berth. And then Iowa, once again, Iowa's not a juggernaut by any stretch of the imagination, but their defense is always phenomenal. Yeah. So to put 21 might be the most points Iowa's allowed all season. Not sure about that.
I'll look that up.
But, they weren't able to run the ball. They did have some success through the air, threw for about 230 on 16 completions. So they were getting some chunk plays there. Only turned the ball over once. How about this for a stat? Iowa, 0 penalties the entire game.
Wow.
It's pretty rare. I mean, you can play clean football. Troy had 6 for 39 yards, but it's pretty rare to have 0. Now, you don't know, they could have had penalties that were declined or whatever. But
true.
Iowa did run the ball for 284 yards and pretty much dominated time of possession. But good start, had hope at halftime, then gave up 2 touchdowns early in the third quarter, and it was pretty much over from there.
Yeah, you are correct. Troy has scored the most points on an Iowa defense all season. It is only by 1 point because Iowa State did beat them 20-19. But still, Troy holds the declaration of scoring the most points so far on the young season on this Iowa defense. All right, so Troy fans, be patient. Your time will come. Also, conference play hasn't even started. You could round into form in time to go on a run just like you've done the past 2 seasons. So don't lose hope just yet. I'm telling you, it's far too early to say season is over. From experience, from watching you guys do it, it's not leaning on a whole lot of other people. Although App had a run like that last year, right? What were we 1-2 to start the year?
Yeah, I think we won 5 in a row.
Yeah,
into the conference championship game.
Yeah. So don't lose hope. There is hope springs eternal. Okay, so we get into this one now. App State beats ECU 21-19. I owe you money for this one, Marv, by the way. Don't let me forget that.
It has not been forgotten. Man,
oh, man.
what a coming off of the Clemson debacle. I was texting you and Seth. We essentially spotted them 16 points. Big pass play on the third play from scrimmage, then the pick six, and it was just like, oh my God, what have we become? This can't be what the reality is. And for App to just dig their cleats into the grass and say, nope, we're not having this. After the first quarter, they pretty much just completely dominated the game. If we hadn't turned the ball over 3 times, the score is probably significantly different. But I think, you hear Coach Clark talk about App State football. What is App State football? What is the culture? The culture is just get it done, right? And you take a beat down at Clemson that you aren't happy about, and you always try to say the cliche stuff like don't let a bad loss beat you twice, right? And for a second there, it looked like it was going to, but I'll give them a lot of credit. That was gritty. ECU's defense is good.
Yes.
ECU's offense is still trying to find its way, even though they played a lot cleaner against us than they had in the previous games. But to go on the road to ECU, which can have a pretty good game day atmosphere, typically does, and get down big and come back like that, I think that speaks volume for the character of the guys, and the fact that they're just not going to give up.
Yeah, absolutely does. Ben James letting everybody know App State quarterback Aguilar leads the Sun Belt in passing after 3 weeks. And so, yeah, I mean, he had the third largest or the third best passing yardage in a road game. I think it's a weird statistic, but yeah, there's only 2 App State quarterback legends that are in front of him. And the first one is Monty Edwards, to no surprise.
Second one was Richie in that Furman game.
No, it was actually Taylor Lamb.
Oh, wow. Tweetsy Taylor.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Ben, to answer your question or to comment on that, when you can't run the ball, you are forced to throw it. And when you've got a guy like Joey back there who, hey, give the offensive line credit. People are going to say, oh, App's not running the ball. What's wrong with the offensive line? He hasn't been sacked a lot. They're actually giving him time to throw the ball. He is kind of mobile, so he can create some extra time if he needs it. But they've kept him on his feet for the most part. And, yeah, dude's got a cannon. That pass he made to Jackson off his back foot, that 36 yard to the corner, like there's not a lot of dudes that can make that throw. That was just off your back foot, not stepping into it to throw it that far, that precise was pretty impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. That was luckily towards the end zone we were kind of just up from. So very cool to see that one because it looked like I'll be honest, I don't know if Jackson ran the route wrong a little bit to start with because it looked like he was expecting it on the inside here. And I'm pretty sure he does a move all the way around to catch that, to turn and get that caught. But again, Aguilar knew how to throw that, right? Threw it to the back shoulder on purpose because he threw away from the defender. The wide receiver made the adjustment. Jackson gets into the end zone, which was the go-ahead touchdown. Yeah, I mean, it was a great game to be at. I will say that definitely was not a sellout, or at least as far as actual butts and seats. The upper deck was definitely struggling in that regard. It wasn't real bad.
Looked very easy, which is, so I told you, I was born and raised in Greenville, North Carolina. My mom was a season ticket holder for the Pirates from the time I was born. I actually spent my first year of college at East Carolina. When ECU's good at football, first of all, did you get to tailgate at all?
No, I pretty much got there right. I had to park in the mall. So as weird as it is, every spot I was trying to turn into just to see if I could pay to get, close. I wouldn't even be allowed to turn all the way in there. Oh, get out of here. The full. Okay. Because I got there at just before 3 trying to find a spot. So I got into town really quick because everybody was already settled, which was nice in a way. But it was hard to figure out where to go. And I had parked at the mall back in 2009, so I knew that was a spot, and I kind of found my way there accidentally. So then I just parked and immediately got out and started calling the guy I knew who ended up getting me down on the sideline, as you saw. And I was like, hey, man, how drop a pin. I got to find you. So I got to get over there so I can get in the game. So anyway, sorry, that was a long thing. But yeah.
What I was trying to get at is, ECU tailgate, top notch. It's phenomenal. When ECU is good, Dowdy Ficklin, or as the locals like to call it, Rowdy Ficklin, has a phenomenal atmosphere. So just to see it on TV and to see some of the stands empty, and that program's not where they want to be. But how was the overall experience in the game? I'm sure it was loud at the beginning as they started getting points.
Yeah, no, I thought it was loud up until the fourth quarter. I was impressed with the level of volume, I guess you would call it.
Yeah.
Especially when I was down on the sideline, you could really hear it then. And that was when App was trying to close that gap before the half, where they ended up settling for a field goal there. But yeah, no, I was pleasantly I wouldn't even say surprised. I mean, it was back almost 20 years ago now, back in 2009. But yeah, I mean, they were loud as hell then in a smaller stadium. So the stadium's bigger. And like you said, it's just not quite at the fever pitch program wise. And I think had they been 8 and 9 win teams the past 2 years and they're 2-0 this year, you're looking at a full stadium without any question at all. It's just,
100%.
It's been down a little bit, and the 2-0 start is good. It had a lot of people there, a lot of excitement. There was a guy holding a sign that said, keep doubting us. I don't have any doubt personally. I thought I was way more impressed coming away from what ECU was able to do than I thought I was going to be. I mean, I thought our defense was going to come alive as far as App was concerned and make Garcia pay for some more throws and stuff. We had one interception off of him.
Yep.
He fumbled one that was pretty quickly gobbled up by, I think, an offensive lineman of his.
Yeah.
So not a terrible thing because he was kind of going to the ground already anyway. But yeah, I mean, it's an American team. You won a victory. It's an in-state, essentially a rivalry. I don't know if they play enough to kind of consider it like one of the bigger ones.
Yeah.
But you got that East-West factor within the state. I mean, it's a cool one. I think Pirate fans want to see it continue. I know App fans want to see it continue. That was the biggest thing that we talked about after the game was over for both sides. So
we got to get a better deal next time, though. We signed a 4-game series with them where we got a home game. We did one in Charlotte, and they got 2 home games. ECU fans, we've beat you 3 times in a row now. Next time we get 2 home games, you get 1 away.
Yep, I agree with that.
But
do another random one in Charlotte. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, the one in Charlotte was cool. It's good for the state of North Carolina to have 2 regional teams at the same level, if you will. Play each other. I hope we do it more since other teams in the state just don't seem to want to play us.
Yeah. Screw them. We'll play teams with fan bases that care because Wake Forest and Duke are non-existent in that regard.
Yeah.
So
how hot do you think Houston's seat gets? I think it was pretty warm coming into the season. I think the first 2 wins maybe cooled it down a little bit. I've seen some Pirate fans that, aren't really happy with the state of the program, think that this is the type of game that if they're clicking on all cylinders, they should win. They go to Liberty this weekend, which isn't going to be easy. I don't know. What do you think? If they miss a bowl game, is he gone?
Oh, if they miss a bowl game, yeah, you're looking at a real possibility because, like you said, there's a pedigree there. They expect something, and if you haven't been doing it enough, you're not going to last very long. I still think he's a great coach. I think he's a good coach, a good recruiter. I mean, they had talent on that field. Harris led the way as far as the rushing statistics were concerned.
That defense is phenomenal. If they can figure out that offense, which I like their up-tempo scheme thing that they do.
Yeah, they went up-tempo a lot.
Yeah, I think at running back and wide receiver, they've got the talent. I think Garcia's got a lot of arm talent. He just makes some pretty dumb decisions sometimes.
So that must have been part of the game plan. Last thing I'll really touch on here, and you can tell me maybe what you saw from watching it on the television. But they went deep early, got the touchdown. It looked just like a reminiscent of the 3 times Clemson started the game with the ball. Like, oh God, here we go again. Well, then there was one that was either batted away or close to picked off or something like that, and then they did not go downfield on the deep stretch anymore the rest of the game. I guess the one time they did was the interception towards the end there.
Yeah, and so I don't know if changed our coverage to kind of play more over the top and give them the dink and dunks, because they did a lot of short to intermediate passing, and he
Yes.
played pretty well. I mean, I was impressed with
Yeah.
Garcia. You come in and you're like, oh, the kid's turned the ball over 10 times in 2 games and thrown 7 picks. Like, we're going to get 2 or 3. And
Yep. That's what I thought.
he didn't look like the kind of guy that made bad decisions. The interception that he did throw, I don't think he ever saw that the safety went off of one guy and stayed put. I thought he had the safety moved and had a big open window. When you see it live, it's like, oh, that was a bad pass. But besides that, I thought he played pretty well.
Yeah, no, I thought he was a threat most of the day. So yeah, I think ECU is going to be just fine in the end. And the team they matched up with just last week, ODU, actually ends up staying home to play host to Virginia Tech, as we talked about already. A team that lost in the early part of the season to Vanderbilt. So now we have the what do we call that? The property, the transitive property. So you now have Virginia Tech beats ODU, but Virginia Tech lost to Vanderbilt, and now Georgia State's beaten Vanderbilt. So Georgia State's better than ODU, right? I mean, just automatically.
Oh, I guess they're also better than Virginia Tech then, if we're going to go that loose there.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, none of it makes any sense. That's why the transitive property is fun to argue when you're early season and we don't know what some of these teams are made out of. But I'll say this. ODU's defense has been great coming in, right? Their offense has been the exact opposite, unfortunately. I thought this game may go Virginia Tech's way. That part didn't surprise me, but the 37-17 did surprise me. I didn't think it would get that, out of hand. I know that's not terribly out of hand, but
no, it was close at halftime. It was 14-10 at halftime. And then you look at the third quarter, it comes out. It's they get a pair of field goals in the third quarter, and Virginia Tech does, and they get 2 touchdowns to begin the fourth quarter and kind of just put it away. ODU's offense, I don't know. Last year, they seemed to just feast off of the big explosive play, and they just haven't had it this year.
Yeah. I don't really know why. I mean, you got Ethan Page.
I don't either. Same quarterback, yeah.
Yeah, we saw Grant Wilson struggled in that first game against South Carolina to take care of the ball properly with some fumbles and interceptions. But then when he was getting it to some of the wide receivers, they were making plays. They had some good plays. The running backs have struggled, and that's probably a portion of
they
them
ran well
struggling.
against Virginia Tech. They ran the ball for 243. The problem was they had 50 yards through the air. You're not going to beat an ACC team with 50 yards through the air. You just can't do it.
Yeah, and that's a very important note too that we actually haven't touched on yet. So Grant Wilson doesn't play in this game, and it's a question whether it was an injury or if it was time to make the change. They had 2 freshmen come in and kind of split some time. That's not going to bode well against a power conference opponent for their first games, to see playing time. So I'm not sure what ODU fans expected in this one. We thought that they could struggle. That preseason preview that we did, the Monarchists seemed kind of realistic that getting back to a bowl game would be good, would be big, in a regard. But I think after that start against South Carolina, then expectations changed and they went up here, and maybe rightly so. But now we're seeing that may have been, a struggle for South Carolina to start the year for some reason. ODU was taking advantage, probably should have, would have, and could have taken better advantage to get that victory. But yeah, I mean, I think
2-0 going into that game. I mean, that South Carolina game and the ECU game, the way I see it, the way their offense is playing and as good as their defense has been playing, the best chance for them to win is going to be one of those ugly games, like a 21-19 type of game. And they had played their what might be their style of ball the first 2 weeks. I think just Virginia Tech was a little bit too much. Once again, you bring in 2 freshmen, in lieu of your experienced quarterback, and you throw for 50 yards, and that's not a recipe for success.
No, definitely not a recipe for success. The only good part, and who knows if it was a key, Allie Jennings used to play for ODU and transferred into Virginia Tech 2 seasons ago. In fact, I think last year was really supposed to be his last year, but he got injured early enough in the season last year that he got a redshirt year or whatever you want to call it, whatever they call that, injury year. So he came back this year obviously to improve his draft stock. They held him to only 2 catches for 26 yards.
Okay.
So, maybe that's something specific. They were looking at trying to shut him down, and they did do that. A little tidbit that maybe they can hold on to from that game. Obviously, at the end, it's just winning and losing, but
Yes.
a little something, little tidbit there in that one. All right, another game that, like one of the earlier ones, was never in question. It was South Alabama. Yeah, this one didn't get that in hand. But Georgia Southern, incomplete control from start to finish versus South Carolina State, winning this one 42-14. I would say expected, right?
Oh, yeah. Would have expected nothing less than that.
Yeah. And a great performance by French there at the quarterback position. Has yet to throw an interception on the season. So really impressive there for a first time. I mean, he started other games, I guess a full-time starter, right, from the beginning of the season. And yeah, I mean, I guess the only thing that's crazy to me, and obviously with Helton's offense, is switched from what we knew Georgia Southern to be many years ago to the air raid offense. But it's crazy to me that their running backs, like, nobody broke 50 yards. And yeah, they were having success throwing the ball, but like this is the type of team where you run it down their throats, right? I mean,
You would think so. I mean, if you look at the team stats, like they only outgained South Carolina State by 40 yards. They only racked up 351 yards. You look at the final score and you think it would have been a complete domination.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is. I'm still getting used to seeing Georgia Southern throw the ball more than 7 times in a football game, and throw it efficiently. I mean, French
Yeah.
is he's having a phenomenal season. He was. I mean, you want to talk about efficiency? He was 17 of 24 for 211 and 2 touchdowns. It's pretty good.
Yeah. Pretty crazy.
And they also just kind of looking through the stats, they lost time of possession by 5 minutes.
Really?
Yeah, only caused 1 turnover. Like I said, looking at the score, you would think that the stats are a little bit more imbalanced than that, but they're not.
Interesting. Yeah. See, this is another one that was pretty much playing out the entirety of the finish of the app game and my drive home. So I did not get to take any of this one in just yet. Now, actually, I was like, maybe I won't really go back and watch that whole thing, but maybe I'm going to have to see how the score got so out of hand with the statistics being what they were. Obviously, there was at least 1 defensive touchdown because they had a pick 6. And that was Tracy Hill Jr., 60 yards on that one, too. So a big one, not just some little thing there. Nothing else really crazy. I mean, they didn't kick return or punt return anything for a touchdown. So that was the only, if you think you get 1 or 2 of those and a pick or 2 for pick 6s, it makes sense about why the score gets that way without a ton of offensive statistics that really jump out the page. But hey, they put it together and still won handily. And South Carolina State, I don't know if they've ever been routinely good. I know they've had a few good years, but not really your upper echelon FCS team, I guess.
I can remember during the FCS days for App State, I think we played South Carolina State in the first round of the playoffs like 3 times in a row. Twice. It was 2 or 3.
It was at least 2 times in a row, yes.
They were solid then. Do you remember when they brought their band and we let them halftime, the Marching 101?
Yep.
They are phenomenal.
Yes. I don't know. It's like cultural appropriation or something, but like more bands should just mimic that type of performance because I've heard it from everyone. I mean, NC Central was just here at UNC down the road Saturday. But I hear more about the band's performance than the game. Like it literally is that big of a deal and people come to witness it. So why aren't more bands and schools across the country going to this, like, make this entertaining, make this more entertaining? Like you just stand there and do a few formations and play classic rock songs. Sorry, I'm not blown away. I'm not really. I'll go grab a hot dog and a drink. Like I don't know. I want to be entertained more than that, right? Like
I can remember when they came. I think it was at least the second time when they came when we let their band perform at halftime.
Yeah.
I didn't leave my seat. Like there was no bathroom break or go get
Nope.
something to eat or something to drink. It was like I want to see what all this noise is about, and then you see them and you're like, oh wow, that was really good.
Yeah, and the one thing that I have heard routinely when you say something about like, why don't more people do that? Like, well, the sound quality from the instruments and they're just not as good. I'm like, I do not care if it's perfect
Yeah.
because I'm seeing people do like front flips with freaking instruments and the majorettes dancing and the drum line going crazy. I do not care if it sounds uh, crystal clear and perfect. You ever been to a live concert? Sometimes those artists don't sound great, but if they put on a hell of a performance,
It's all
nobody cares if the sound was a little off from the studio quality. That's what I'm talking about here. I want to see something that jumps out the page to me that is just enthralling as far as entertainment value goes. And those HBCU bands do that, and they provide that every single time without question. So yeah, I mean, I would love to see more of that kind of stuff. We got Randy jumping in, who's a Georgia Southern fan. He's saying South Carolina State's quarterback is really good. He controlled much of the game. Georgia Southern found a way to bend but not break. Also, we have Ole Miss next week, so we went easy versus South Carolina State. Nothing fancy. And actually, to touch on Randy's point here, TJ did answer that question. I forgot to ask him on the air. He said you absolutely do hide things and keep your playbook vanilla. It's very much a thing. I question that because I said, don't you want to run some of those plays so you got familiarity and get your guys, understanding it and see maybe what didn't work and try and fix it? And no, it doesn't seem that that's really the case. They will literally keep stuff out of the playbook from 1 week to the next if they think it's something they could use to their advantage. So I was a little surprised by that. Not like fully shocked, but I just kind of thought maybe you disguise it a little bit and still run kind of the same play. Maybe those types of things are going on. He didn't get that detailed, but essentially that's what he's saying. He said, Randy's saying we're saving all our TDs for conference play. And then he has the little call out there that I won't repeat on air because it's a dirty word.
I think they've scored their fair share of TDs. I think I'm hoping that they've wasted all of them before they get to conference play.
Yeah, I don't think they have. From what I've seen, I've been really impressed with their offense. So, yeah, that defense continues to get better along the way after that first game performance. And again, I think this conference needs to watch out for the Eagles of Georgia Southern. Okay. This is technically not the nightcap because it just ended last, but it's not the last game we're going to cover. This is just the big one for the night. Vanderbilt walks into Atlanta undefeated, but they walk out with a loss. How much of this one did you watch, Marv?
Pretty much after the app game ended, I got on my phone and I started looking at Sunbelt scores to see which one was the closest. And I saw this game was going. I think when I got in, it was, gosh, what was the score at that point? It was still in the teens for each team. So I got in when it was 10-12 at halftime. So I watched from the third quarter forward, and man, that was a great second half of football.
Yes, I must be similar with you because I definitely jumped in after halftime.
Yeah, because I think I texted you guys and I was like, Georgia State's up. Then they pushed. Then they pushed it to 10. And then it was just back and forth that fourth quarter. I'm just looking at the box score now. The fourth quarter had 36 points scored.
Yeah, both teams went off. Like no offense could be stopped in the fourth quarter. It was kind of crazy. In fact, when Vanderbilt scored their last touchdown, I was literally talking to myself out loud in the truck as I'm driving. I'm like, they might have scored too fast. That's what I said out loud. They might have scored too fast. And Marv, we know that because we've seen App State do it twice against Penn State and Tennessee. And you go, there's too much time left. And
they left
exactly what happened to the other way.
They left 1 minute and 14 seconds on the clock, and Georgia State scored 59 seconds to march down the field and score. But man, obviously best win by a SoCon team so far this year, or by a Sunbelt team so far this year.
I would say it is the best win, and I'm not saying like Vanderbilt's all of a sudden towards the top of the SEC, but they're undefeated coming in, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and it's an SEC school.
Yeah, so there is a pedigree. Let's say how big of a deal this is. The SEC is going to crap all over all the Vanderbilt fans that were out there talking trash because they're like, you can't even beat a Sunbelt team. So yeah, I mean it's going to be a big deal. So I would say it's definitely the top win of the season so far. So
I'd agree.
Something that Georgia State fans can hang their hat on. And I'm learning the quarterback's name is nowhere near what I've been pronouncing.
What have you been saying?
Oh God, I don't even know if I could. I don't think I could replicate it twice in a row. But it sounds like it's like Vayer, which has no bearing on what I've been looking at.
I
But it
like.
is French.
I think we've been saying Villano, kind of putting like the Cajun twist to it with the X at the end. But
Yeah,
no, it's once again best win so far by a Sun Belt team. New coaching staff at Georgia State. Speaking of the empty stadiums, my wife was sitting out here with me watching it, and they panned to the stadium, and you know, she's a casual observer of football. She definitely knows more about App State football than any other Sun Belt team, and she just goes, "Why is no one there?" I was like, "Because no one's ever there."
well, not only that, so like if you're playing an SEC team like Georgia or Florida or Ole Miss, they're going to
Yep,
bring their big fan base with them, and in a place like Atlanta, I'm sure there's a lot of them that are already in those types of areas. Vanderbilt's not a really big school.
they're
It's
not.
not got a huge alumni base. Nashville's not terribly far from Atlanta. I mean, it's a reasonable drive, but they could have made the trip. But yeah, neither fan base has a bunch of fans, and that was one of the things that I picked up, and that was so weird watching this game was there's a massive play, right? Like you just said, 59 seconds to march down to get
Yeah,
the touchdown. They didn't even have. I mean, they could have kicked a field goal within 3 plays. They were in field goal range to
yeah.
tie the game, and of course they score the touchdown instead to win it. But they were making these plays, and I'm like, it sounds like they're at the away venue, and they just had this big first down picked up, and this crowd's gone silent because it's at Vanderbilt's home stadium. That's what it sounded like. I mean, that's how little noise was being made. I'm like, I'm like turning up the volume. Like I can't be hearing this right because I'm not hearing much of anything. So yeah, I mean,
Do you want to guess what the attendance was? And by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and say this: there were not this many people in the stands. Do you want to know what the
right.
posted attendance was?
Oh, the posted. I mean, I'm probably gonna say posted maybe 12,000 is what they're listing.
14-4, and there
Okay.
could not have been more than 6,000 people in that stadium.
No. I mean, when I watched, I don't remember them specifically panning to large spots in the stadium, but when they did close up on fans, even in the small close ups for the people up
So
close to the
so much
field,
space.
there was plenty of pockets of emptiness.
Hey, Vegas. If there would have been more people betting on this game, Vegas would have lost its ass on this. The line was Vandy minus 8.5.
Okay.
The over under was 45.5.
Wow. Wow. I'm surprised though that the line was, you said 8.5.
I'm actually that going in on face value, considering the fact that Vandy beat Virginia Tech in week 1, that might have seemed low. I think what do they always say? The home team always gets 3 points.
Yeah.
So on neutral site, it would have been 11.5. It would have been 14.5 at Vandy. That probably makes sense. But the over under being that low,
Yeah.
it's a little surprising.
Yeah, that's they must have just thought this Georgia State offense wasn't going to move the ball. But Ben is bringing up some good points here. Georgia State's quarterback is top 5 in passing, and Georgia State running back top 5 in Sunbelt. Sometimes, those things sound good and they are accurate and true as of right now, but you do have to also weigh, the competition in that regard.
Yeah.
So like, let's look at Coastal Carolina. They're probably towards the tops in a lot of statistical categories as far as offense is concerned.
Until this past weekend.
Well, yeah, that wasn't great. But now they've played a Temple team who's been horrendous. Again, they get by them by 8 points, but up until that point has been pretty horrendous. So you're not seeing a great offense go against you there. And then you play an FCS team in William and Mary, who actually is pretty. I mean, honestly, they probably beat Temple head to head, right? So
Maybe.
I'm not sure, but yeah, I mean, you have to weigh what's being seen. But yeah, I mean, I said this before the season. Georgia State was not going to be the last place team in the East, and I'm going to stick to that statement. It might be ODU at this point, but yeah, they're surprising. But there was something about that team's kind of swagger and kind of like quiet confidence at media days. They only had their 2 linebackers there, who Kevin Swint, by the way. Secret's going to be out real soon. I'm pretty sure he's going to be the Sun Belt player of the week for the defense. He's going to be the syndicate player of the week for the defense. There's zero question about that. That kid went off, but he was one of their representatives down in New Orleans for media days. And again, just something about those two kids when they were down there. I'm like, their swagger is here, like you could just tell they were going to be playing free and loose and having fun with it. And they are definitely doing that. And it's sad that more people aren't attending. I'll make that statement right there. I'm not even necessarily talking about Georgia State fans. I'm talking about people in Atlanta. Go see this team. I mean, this could literally be the future. Del McGee is bringing in high-quality recruits already, and he hasn't even been there a full season yet. So,
where did he come from?
Oh, that's a good question.
Let me ask another follow-up question. Where did Elliott
go? He went to South Carolina.
Oh, he went back to South Carolina?
Yep. His family never moved from Columbia, so I guess it was a rather easy, move to get back down there. First of all, do you remember not remember, but for those that don't know, he was a hell of a player at Auburn. So that's where he went to school personally. Played in the NFL for 2 years for the Arizona Cardinals. His head coaching career includes a few high school stops. He was the running backs coach at Georgia Southern in 2014 and 2015. And then he became the interim coach during that same season. Then he went from Georgia Southern to Georgia as a running backs coach for a number of years and was widely considered one of the best recruiters in the country. And so it's no surprise that he's getting a head coaching gig here. Not the best personal speaker or public speaker, I should say. But it must be something in the quiet confidence when he goes and sees these kids and their families when he's recruiting, because he's doing a hell of a job on that recruiting trail. And I'm sure, just like with Sean Clark and Sean Elliott, in the same regards as a lot of coaches that have been successful in this route, when you can show and say that you've been there and you've done it, that has to be a little bit different as far as the recruiting aspect goes to bringing kids into your program, and also probably giving you an eye for that talent. You need to see exactly what you want to see. So,
it sounds like he's got deep roots in the state of Georgia, which is a recruiting rich state. There's a lot of good football players down in Georgia. So was he on any of the national championship staffs for Georgia?
Yes, he was, because he was there from 2016 to 2023. So, yeah.
Okay. So I guess Kirby Smart starting his own coaching tree now.
Yeah, I think I'd safe to say he is. And just to note, so, maybe not head coaching experience at the college level, but his high school record as a head coach, 85-21. So
it's not bad.
Pretty dang good. And we'll jump into the last game of the weekend, one that was actually close. So when you said you were looking at Sunbelt scores that were close, it was between this and the Georgia State game for me. I mean, these two were probably the ones that were going to wrap it up regardless. But this game was it tied at the half? Let me bring that up.
No, it was 28-21 at the halftime.
Okay, but a one-score game, and very impressed, because I think most of the people in the country saw what USF did for 3 quarters against Bama just last week. Kept that a tie game or a one-score game for 3 quarters, and Bama stepped it up and won that 4th quarter rather easily in the end. I think they scored 3 touchdowns there to kind of close that out. But again, this USF team did it the year before to Bama. They did it last week. Then they come in to Hattiesburg and seem to be a good matchup there for the first half. And then South Florida just kind of took off after halftime, unfortunately.
I mean, listen, Southern Miss, and I'm looking at the stats now, they threw 3 quarterbacks. I don't know why, but they almost compiled 400 yards to the air, 397 yards in total. Southern Miss did give up 562 yards, 370 on the ground, which that's never good. They did turn the ball over 3 times, lost the turnover margin, but close game at halftime, but just not enough in the end. The second half was quite a blowout.
Yeah, just a little bit there. Only managed a field goal. I did see something kind of telling. It's hard to say because I'm not there and it's just a clip on the internet, but they did show going into the 4th quarter, how teams kind of rally around themselves. They'll throw up this, they'll throw up 4, whatever, kind of bring it in. Some teams get kind of hyped. Other teams just, bring everybody onto the field. USF had like I think there was a speaker that a player was holding, and they're all kind of like jumping up and down, getting hyped. And then the person that was taking this video from the stadium there, the Rock as they call it, or the Pebble as I call it. But they panned over to USM at that point, who's now down by I guess 3 touchdowns by that point. And they were just kind of like standing around. Body language is like defeated, right? I mean, that's just the best way you'd have to describe it. I don't know. Southern Miss has got a rich history, tradition. Will Hall was looked at as a great person to bring in and lead this team. You got to think that if it doesn't turn around by the end of the season, he's got to be on the chopping block. I think he is a good coach overall, but he's already gotten himself in trouble with some of that. We talked about what he had said in that press conference, right?
I don't think so, because I don't know what it is, and now I'm very intrigued.
Okay, so it wasn't even a press conference. He was actually on like a Zoom meeting, but there may have been multiple people asking him questions. But I think it was a screen grab from that meeting that got put out there and essentially brought to light that when they were talking about the Kentucky game, he said, they was asked a question about what kind of went on or whatever. And he's like, the most important thing is we go up there, we get that check,
Wow.
And then he went off about a couple other things. You know what he meant, right? Like in regards to, I'm not talking about we go up there and expect to lose. That's what people heard, and that's how people took it. He's just saying like to get the game in, right? Because there was a weather thing and not getting these kids hurt and, saving them for the rest of the season and a game that was pretty clearly over. That's kind of what he's alluding to. Like we need to go and take this game because it helps pay for so many other things. And that's bigger than us in the football program, right? That's not what anybody wants to hear when you get drubbed and then you lose your game in the second week as well. Or not the second week, but, heading into the second week because they did rebound and win that against FCS opponent. Just didn't look great doing it. But, yeah, it was not a good look because, of course, there's no context given. It's kind of a clip.
Yes.
From a larger aspect, and he could have gone on to much better explain what he meant. I'm not sure if he did, and that's probably why it came out. But you know what he meant, and I don't think he meant any harm by it or ill will for any reason. But yeah, not a great look when you're struggling as a head coach, and that's kind of what you allude to. Is the first thing is, you need that paycheck.
What he should have said was, and obviously he couldn't say it till after this week. But did you get to see any of the Kentucky-Georgia game?
I didn't know. I missed all of that one. I just heard of it.
He should have said, y'all check out that Kentucky defense. We don't want to go up against that anymore. That Kentucky defense was phenomenal Saturday night.
Yeah. I was kind of hoping they would spring the surprise on Georgia just to ruin everybody.
They had plenty of opportunities.
Yeah. With I turned that one on to listen to it on the way home at the very end. I think the only offense that Kentucky really managed all night was 4 field goals. Is that what it was?
Yeah, I mean, listen, that Georgia defense is NFL defense, if we're being honest. But
right.
The Kentucky defense was I was amazed. I mean, they were really, really, really good. Kentucky was starting a guy who transferred from Georgia. He was the backup there the past couple of years. So they have some familiarity with him. He played an okay game, but there's not a lot of teams that are going to move the ball well against Georgia.
Yeah. No, that's going to be a struggle. Luckily, no one in the conference plays them this year.
Yeah.
Although, everybody always wants their shot. So,
yeah.
That one's
not with that one.
That one's a big shot. Yeah, that's true.
We'll take Georgia State and Georgia Southern.
Yeah, that's a good point. Very good point. Yeah, I think that about wraps it up. Is there anything we want to go over? We've got some cool stuff coming up this week. We got our first conference matchup of the season.
Looking forward to that. Are you going to be in Boone Thursday night?
I am not. Father-in-law has a medical thing he's getting done, and we're going to be. Yeah, well, he's doing pretty good overall, but I think they just want to make sure some stuff's cleared up. So he's got something going on. We're going to stay here regionally. I'll be watching on TV. Maybe we'll do like a live transmission or something.
We'll be there. We're heading up Thursday morning.
Nice.
Some good games. Like you said, South Alabama app. You got Marshall going to Ohio State. That's JMU at Carolina. Tulane, Louisiana, Arkansas State, Iowa State, Virginia, Coastal, Carolina, Southern Miss, Jacksonville State. Troy's going to get on the right track with Florida A&M.
Yeah.
Georgia Southern
Better.
going to Ole Miss, and then Monroe goes to newly number 1 Texas.
Yikes. Hey, man, I would love to see it. ULM has the propensity to knock off top teams. You know, they did it against Bama. Nah, they didn't really. If people remember right, Bama was not what they are now or anywhere near it.
Hey, listen, they get to see the backup quarterback this week.
Oh,
yeah,
that's right. Yours got hurt, right?
Got it. Yeah, but Arch Manning looked really
good.
Good.
He might be improved. He might be an improvement.
I don't know. Yours is a really good quarterback. I think.
I know.
I think he comes back and he's QB1 again. But Manning, I think he had almost 300 yards and 5 touchdowns the other day. I think he threw for like 220 and ran for 70 or close to 80 yards. And but there's a little. I think when we do the recap next week, just looking at the out of conference, I mean Texas, Ole Miss, Virginia, Iowa State, Tulane, UNC, Ohio State. Probably not going to be a very good wins and loss weekend for the Sun Belt. I hate to say it. Maybe somebody surprises us in there, but that's a very, very playing the number 3 team, the number 20 team, the number 5 team, and the number 1 team.
Yeah, that's a gauntlet. Let's just hope we come out anywhere near this week with a 5-5 overall record. I think I'll take it.
Yeah, well, guaranteed to have 1 loss because there's a conference game, so somebody's got.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
And I'm also shocked to see the line on that game open up at 9.5, move down to 7.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Ben James is going to be celebrating his birthday as Arkansas State goes on the road to play Iowa State again. Back-to-back weeks of Arkansas State playing some top teams. As we know, Iowa State has already knocked off Iowa in this season. Big noon kickoff is actually going to be at Ohio State versus Marshall. So that's a big one there. And Artie Cat, great show, guys. Thanks, man. We're going to continue to try and keep this wrap-up show going. It's been really popular so far. So I think the people are liking it. We're liking it. Keeps us up to date with everything. And unfortunately, by this time, usually I can't have watched all of the games. And when we're home and we don't have much going on with the kids, it's a lot easier to jump around and see almost all of them as they're live, at least some portions of them. When we're both traveling to games, it's a little bit more difficult. But we're going to continue to try and tune in. I am going to do everything I can to be at the James Madison UNC game since I can literally jog from my house to that stadium.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, to make up for the fact I'll miss the Thursday game, I'm going to try and see one in person while there's a conference team in town. So, if there's some Dukes fans meeting up, the Friday Center is a great parking lot. It's almost across the street from where I'm located at right now, and I could go over there and meet up with some of the Dukes fans, and hopefully I'll be cheering for you. I won't be wearing purple by any means. Maybe this shirt, but I'll be hoping you guys can spring the upset on the classy Carolina fans down here.
Yeah, that's man. I don't know which team I like least. I don't know. Who I in that game. I'm gonna have to pull for James Madison.
Yep, conference supremacy reigns supreme as far as I'm concerned for this show. Once we get into conference play, all bets are off. But right now, go Sunbelt, right?
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap it up for us, guys. Again, thanks to our sponsors, W Energy, Fanplex Graphics, TSN Off-Road, and Dano Seasoning. Go check out the links in the description for the show, and we will see you guys Wednesday for the preview show.
See you guys.